It's 6 p.m. on a Tuesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Here are the headlines. The ruling and opposition parties continue bickering over key posts at the parliament. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea says it should take the top position of speaker, while the Saenuri Party insists it was traditionally filled by the ruling party. While Seoul and Washington discussed THAAD deployment as a necessary means of defense against North Korean threats, senior Russian and Chinese officials expressed strong opposition to the idea, saying the U.S. system could undermine the strategic balance in the region. Hillary Clinton seems set to clinch the Democratic Party nomination, but it's too soon to put up the posters for the final showdown, of the presidential race, according to rival Bernie Sanders, who isn't counting himself just yet. The New Look National Assembly has missed a legal deadline for choosing who will take the coveted position of Assembly Speaker. The ruling and opposition parties remain deadlocked over which side should fill that and other key parliamentary positions. Kim Young-gil has our top story.
The first extraordinary session of the 20th National Assembly kicked off on Tuesday, but lawmakers from the rival political parties are still wrangling over which of them will take the position of Speaker.
The opposition bloc may now be bigger than the ruling party, which has put pressure on us to vote, but thinking they can win the speaker's seat infringes on parliamentarianism.
The Saenuri Party lost its parliamentary majority in the April general election, garnering 122 seats, while the main opposition Minju Party of Korea won 123. Minor parties and independents took the remaining 55. The Saenuri Party says tradition dictates that the ruling party take the speaker's seat. The Minju Party says it should go to the party with the most seats.
All parliaments around the world give the speaker's seat to the biggest party. Since the Saenuri Party is now the second largest party, it's in a state of shock, as it's been accustomed to being the number one player.
The minor opposition People's Party urged the two rivals to at least put a candidate forward and have the assembly vote. The Minju Party accepted, but the Saenuri Party, now without a parliamentary majority, rejected the idea.
The rival parties should first put up a candidate for the speaker post. Once we elect the speaker, it will be easy to select the two deputy speakers. Then we should carry on with selecting the heads of the standing committees.
The three parties have until Thursday to select the standing committee heads. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Seoul is stepping up efforts to isolate North Korea in the international community for its nuclear provocations. And North Korea appears to be feeling the pressure, so it's doing what it can to maintain ties abroad. Connie Kim has this report.
South Korea views the foreign ministers' meeting between Seoul and Havana as significant, as the two countries have not had any diplomatic relations since the Cuban Revolution in 1959. Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se sat down with his counterpart Bruno Rodriguez on Monday on the sidelines of the summit of the Association of Caribbean States, laying a foundation for mending their severed bilateral relations. Seoul's efforts to strengthen its ties with Havana are part of South Korea's plans to further isolate North Korea in the international community. Uganda's promise to suspend all military cooperation with its longtime ally Pyongyang after a visit to the country by the South Korean president is billed as a crucial achievement in cornering the North. North Korea, for its part, seems to be doing its best to maintain ties with communist states. High-level North Korean officials have recently flown to Equatorial Guinea, Cuba, and China to meet with presidents and high-ranking officials. North Korea's Korean Central News Agency reported Tuesday the vice chairman of the ruling Workers' Party Central Committee, Choi Tae-bok, arrived in Laos after meeting with a senior official in Vietnam. South Korea's foreign minister will meet with his Russian counterpart in Moscow next week as part of ongoing efforts to pressure North Korea. The two will discuss the regime's nuclear weapons program, as well as ways to boost bilateral ties between Seoul and Moscow. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
China and Russia seem united in opposing the deployment of the American missile defense system called THAAD, even though Seoul and Washington are already deep in discussions on the matter. For details, let's turn to our Kim Hyun-bin.
Senior Russian and Chinese officials shared their concerns about the possible deployment of the THAAD battery to the Korean peninsula. According to China's Xinhua news agency on Tuesday, The talks, which took place Monday, were led by Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Igor Morgulov and China's Assistant Foreign Minister Kang Zhonyu. The two expressed their firm opposition to the deployment, saying the system could undermine the strategic balance in the region. South Korea says the deployment is based on its national security interests to better defend against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. In an interview with CNN on Monday, South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-koo said the THAAD deployment would drastically increase Seoul and Washington's capacity to counter North Korea's missile threats. In addition, the Pentagon said Monday South Korea and the United States have made considerable progress in their negotiations on the deployment. Spokesman Peter Cook said the two allies just have an unspecified number of complicated issues to iron out. Sources in Seoul say the two governments are already discussing possible candidate sites in South Korea. There's speculation an official announcement could be made during the annual South Korea-U.S. Defense Ministers meeting in Washington in October. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has reaffirmed that Washington and Beijing will continue to fully enforce UN sanctions on North Korea. Speaking after the conclusion of the annual U.S. China Strategic and Economic Dialogue on Tuesday, Kerry thanked his Chinese counterpart for cooperation on the matter and said both sides agreed they're unwilling to accept North Korea as a nuclear weapons state. This comes at the end of high-level talks in Beijing that lasted 2 days. Other issues that are said to have been discussed include China's reclamation of islands in the South China Sea, cyber hacking, and economic disputes such as China's oversupply of the steel and aluminum industries. Turning to the build-up to the U.S. presidential election now, Hillary Clinton now has enough delegates to win the Democratic nomination. It's the first time in American history a female candidate will become the nominee for a major U.S. political party. Kim Jong-soo keeps us up to date on the race for the White House.
Hillary Clinton has secured 2,383 delegates, enough to give her the Democratic Party nomination, which would make her the first woman to top the presidential ticket of either political party. According to an Associated Press count released Monday night, the former U.S. Secretary of State has 1,812 pledged delegates and 571 superdelegates. Pledged delegates are won through primaries and caucuses, while superdelegates are not obligated to vote for any candidate and can switch at any time. But the historic news does not come without controversy. Clinton's rival, Bernie Sanders, says she has not won the nomination with certainty, as the superdelegates cannot vote until the party convention in July. He has said he will keep fighting through the 6 states that go to the polls on Tuesday, including California, which has 548 delegates in stake. The AP report said, however, that it is no longer possible for Sanders to amass enough delegates to catch up. While Clinton's nomination seems nearly confirmed, experts say losing California could deliver a psychological blow.
The Clintons have an enormous history with the state. I think she'll go into the convention not necessarily limping, but in a much weaker position if she doesn't finish the primary off with a strong win in California.
With the primaries nearing an end, all eyes are on the next phase of the election. After the state's vote on Tuesday, one last Democratic primary will be held in Washington, D.C. on June 14th. The Republican National Convention will be held from July 18th to 21st, while the Democratic National Convention will be held from July 25th to 28th. The nominees will then face off in 3 debates, with the first on September 26th, and voters will make their final choice on Election Day on November 8th. Kim Jong-soo, Arirang News.
Korea shares got a lift after the prospect for a rate hike in the U.S. cooled. This comes after Fed Chair Janet Yellen made note of disappointing jobs figures for May, as well as other uncertainties surrounding the U.S. economy. Kim Min-ji looks beyond the digits.
Korea's benchmark KOSPI added 1.3% on Tuesday, topping the 2000 level. This comes on the back of predictions there won't be a rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve this month. U.S. jobs data for May showed that only 38,000 new jobs were created last month, far below the expected 160,000. Fed Chair Janet Yellen also acknowledged May job figures were disappointing, although she said it would be wrong to put too much weight on a single report. Speaking at the World Affairs Council in Philadelphia on Monday, Yellen also noted the uncertainties facing the U.S. economy, such as slower demand and productivity, inflation, as well as overseas risks, which could change the Fed's course of action.
So an important question is whether the U.S. economy could continue to make progress amid fairly considerable global bumpiness. I continue to think that the answer to that question is yes, but the weak investment performance in recent months is concerning, and Friday's employment report provides another reminder that the question is still relevant.
Although Yellen said positive forces supporting employment growth and higher inflation would continue to outweigh the negative ones, she did not give an exact time frame for a rate hike, in contrast to a speech last month in which she said the Fed will accommodate one in the coming months.
If incoming data are consistent with labor market conditions strengthening and inflation making progress toward our 2% objective, as I expect, further gradual increases in the federal funds rate are likely to be appropriate and most conducive to meeting and maintaining those objectives.
The U.S. Central Bank is set to kick off a regular two-day policy meeting next Tuesday. The Fed raised rates in December of last year after almost a decade of near-zero rates. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Seoul prosecutors have summoned the former head of Oxy Korea for additional questioning about his involvement in the toxic humidifier disinfectant scandal that has taken lives in Korea. Lee Min-young tells us more.
The former head of Oxy Korea Korea was called in for a second round of questioning on the company's toxic humidifier sterilizer, which killed or seriously injured hundreds of people in Korea. John Lee, who is currently the CEO of Google Korea, appeared at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's office on Tuesday. Prosecutors are deciding whether to file for a warrant for Lee's arrest. Lee was first summoned 2 weeks ago when prosecutors tried to ascertain if he was aware of the toxicity of PHMG, a toxic compound used in the sterilizer. Lee was accused of failing to act after receiving complaints from customers about the side effects of the product. He's also being accused of false advertisement, as Oxy Korea reassured customers the product was safe for children, even though that was unconfirmed. Lee was the chief executive of Oxy Korea from 2005 to 2010, when sales of the sterilizers were at their highest. He has denied all the allegations. While the prosecution questions the CEO, civic groups are trying to hold the government to account. The non-profit lawyers group Minbyun on Monday accused the Environment Ministry of being aware of the potential dangers of the toxic ingredient, while turning a blind eye to the fact that customers were exposed to the deadly chemical PHMG. Minbyun cited an Environment Ministry report from 2005 that noted the potential dangers of PHMG in Oxy products, and said they were negligent because it did not conduct any follow-up testing. The humidifier disinfectant case has been rated as one of the worst scandals involving common household products with chemical ingredients. It came to light after 4 pregnant women died of lung problems from unknown causes in 2011. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
More legal action at a national level. The Korean government has filed a criminal complaint against Nissan Korea CEO based on accusations the Japanese carmaker cheated on auto emissions tests. Kim Ha-sung has the latest.
Korea's Environment Ministry has filed a criminal complaint against Nissan Korea for allegedly manipulating vehicle emissions tests. The ministry also ordered a recall of 814 Qashqai SUVs sold from November 15 to May this year and suspended future sales of the model. It also fined the Japanese car maker $286,000.
The Environment Ministry has made quite a strong move by filing a criminal complaint against Nissan Korea. This means Korean prosecutors will launch a full investigation into the matter, and we will see the results come out fairly soon.
The SUV's emissions management system allegedly turns off automatically under regular driving conditions at temperatures over 35 degrees Celsius. By turning off the device, fresh air cannot enter the engine compartment, producing more nitrogen oxide emissions. Nissan Korea has denied any wrongdoing, saying the system turns off automatically in order to prevent engine damage from overheating. It added that EU authorities did not find anything wrong after putting the vehicle through similar testing standards as Korean regulators. The Korean government conducted emissions tests on 20 different diesel car models, including Nissan's Qashqai, after Volkswagen admitted last year to using a cheat device to falsify its emissions data. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Volkswagen and Audi are still feeling the repercussions of their emissions cheating scandal. According to the Korea Automobile Importers and Distributors Association, VW sales from January to May sank almost 26% compared to the same period last year. The figure was roughly 17% for Audi. While sales of imported cars in Korea surged 6% in May from the year before to 2,200, total sales in the January to May period have shrunk 2.3% compared to 2015, with roughly 93,000 sold. German cars have especially suffered, with sales down 7.6%, reducing their market share by roughly 3 percentage points. These are the stories we're following at this hour. For more, do join us at 10 p.m. Korea time. From all of us here at Arirang News, thank you for watching.